Today we are beginning the first chapter in this course, that is CDCS. We all know CDCS is conducted by LIBF, London Institute of Banking and Finance. The first chapter that we are taking up today is the history and use of documentary credits. The history and use of documentary credits. Now, what are the learning objectives of this? This chapter includes a brief history of the documentary credit, the types of transaction for which a documentary credit is often chosen, types of transaction for which a documentary credit is often chosen as the method of settlement. So, we should be able to describe the origin of a documentary credit. What is our main learning objective in this chapter? The origin of a documentary credit. Let us look into a brief history. What does this history talk about? Historians have been able to trace the use of documentary credits as far as ancient Egypt and Babylon. Only in the 18th and 19th centuries, this term, letter of credit, became widely used and recognized. Only in the 18th and 19th centuries, this term became widely used. What was the term? Letter of credit. So during this period, it was common for the merchants to seek out new markets. These merchants would go to new markets to make use of the trading opportunities which were offered by such markets. Trading opportunities offered by such markets. So documentary credits provided their clients with a means of obtaining cash. See, during the overseas travel, these merchants, they needed cash. So during overseas travel, all the clients would be provided with cash. Banks in the Western world introduced the concept of traveler's letter of credit. So from where did this word traveler's letter of credit come? It came from the banks in the Western world. This document allowed bank clients to avoid the need to carry large sums of money. Otherwise, the large sums of money could be lost or stolen. So documentary credit allowed the bank clients to avoid the need to carry large sums of money. So, in addition to this traveler's letter of credit, it was usual for the client for carrying a formal letter of introduction. What was he carrying? A formal letter of introduction. This was addressed to the bank's overseas correspondent or agent. To whom was this letter of introduction addressed? To the bank's overseas correspondent or agent. This letter was usually sent in advance of travel and indicated that the client, my client, was a valued customer of the bank. My client was a valued customer of the bank. So it would also request that the correspondent or agent to provide the client with any necessary assistance to be provided to my client when he goes abroad. So a traveler's letter of credit, what are we knowing about it? It literally took the form of a letter. Traveler's letter of credit literally took the form of a letter. That is why we call it as a letter of credit. It indicated that the issuing bank would honor bills of exchange drawn on it. By whom did the bill of exchange drawn? By the correspondent. So who drew the bill of exchange? The correspondent or agent. Whatever amount is paid to the named traveler, any charges incurred by the correspondent or agent, the issuing bank would honor bills of exchange drawn on it. So which bank would honor? The issuing bank. The bank which issued the traveler's letter of credit. There would also be an indication in this. What is the maximum amount that he can draw? And also it would come with an expiry date. Expiry date and the maximum amount that could be drawn in the traveler's letter of credit. So each correspondent or agent was required to indicate on the original traveler's letter of credit whatever the details of the amount paid and the relevant dates. So what was indicated on the traveler's letter of credit? The details of the amounts paid and the relevant date. So the client always retained possession of the original document. So who retained possession of the original document? The client. So let us see what happened next. It can therefore be seen that the origin of a documentary credit started with a simple letter. How did the origin of the documentary credit start? With a simple letter provided by the bank to the correspondent or agent. And upon production of that letter issued by the issuing bank addressed to the correspondent or agent, the credit was provided to my named client in the form of money. So what did my client get in exchange for the letter? Money. So this can be seen, the origin, how it started in the form of a letter provided by the bank. Next, let's see what happened. From 1840, documentary credits began to serve as a means of facilitating payment. So documentary credits were means of facilitating payment for foreign trade transactions. Merchants were able to arrange goods to be sent from overseas as a result of personal contacts made during their travel. So these merchants, when they went abroad, they had personal contacts. Because of these personal contacts, they were able to send goods from the overseas to the country. So the oldest available example of the traveler's type of letter of credit, where do you find? Where do you find the oldest available example of the traveler's letter of credit? You find it in Washington, in U.S. Library of Congress. There is U.S. Library of Congress. You will find it in Washington. So on 4th July 1803, the then President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson. Who was the President of the United States in 1803? Thomas Jefferson. He provided a letter to the explorers. Who were the explorers? Captain Meriwether Lewis and Captain William Clark. Captain Meriwether Lewis and Captain William Clark. They departed on their expedition. These two people, Captain Meriwether Lewis, explorers, Captain William Clark, they departed on their famous expedition through the western part of the United States. So where did they do the expedition? On the western part of the United States. So when was this? In which year? 1803. And let us now look at the use of documentary credits. What are we now going to look into after knowing the brief history? We are now to see the use of the documentary credits. So documentary credit, if you look at the statistics, they are very steady today. This is the method of settlement. The ICC, International Chamber of Commerce, they brought out a global survey report, Global Trade and Finance Survey report. Who brought out this report? ICC, Global Trade and Finance Survey report. When was this released? In July 2014. And that indicated, this report indicated that volume of SWIFT messages. We all send the letter of credit through MT700. So the SWIFT MT700 messages, that is the issue of the documentary credit. This increased by 3.3% between 2012 and 2013. ICC brought out this report in 2014. So it increased by 3.3%. Between 2012 and 2013, and this report was brought out by ICC. What was the report? Global Trade and Finance Survey report. Global Trade and Finance Survey report. So this documentary credit as a method of settlement remains steady till today. It is very steady. All our MT700 messages. So this is the most common form. MT700 is the mantra for sending our letter of credit. This volume figures provided by SWIFT. What is SWIFT? Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. So SWIFT provides the figures, which is the only reliable data. The only reliable data on the use of documentary credits. On the use of documentary credits. This increase contributed annual volume of 4,787,071 documentary credit issued during 2013. Wow, what a figure! During 2013, the increase it contributed to an annual volume of 4,787,071 documentary credit. And this was almost, if you look at per month, it is 399,000 documentary credits issued per month. It's really a huge figure. So, Asia Pacific region, which region contributed for the bulk of the documentary credit volume? It was the Asia Pacific region. Asia Pacific region. And almost 70% of the market had conquered. Almost 70% of the market. The report ICC 2014. So despite this increase, the global volumes remain below those which were experienced in 1970, 1980 and 1990. Because we are talking of the year 2014 release, whereas we are comparing it to the figure in 1970, 1980, 1990. Despite this increase, the global volumes remain below. So now let us see how are we using a documentary credit. Today, a documentary credit can be used for almost any situation in which the goods are being shipped. Goods are being shipped or services provided or performance provided. Goods, services or performance provided. It can range from multi-million dollar, renminbi, euro, any currency. These are all the currencies, various currencies globally which are in the picture. It could be a multi-million dollar, it could be a renminbi, it can be euro. And even building projects to the shipment of a simple spare part, even a small spare part could be done for a machine or a vehicle. This is how the documentary credit is used. So today, documentary credit is used for almost any type of transaction. It is used for any type of transaction. So the most common type of goods, which fall into this category. Which is the good? You have the consumables, clothing, food, you have the rice, wheat, sugar, etc. However, transactions can equally apply even to unusual items. It can also be unusual, such as sale, lease, scrapping of a vessel or aircraft. It can also apply to some unusual items like sale, lease or scrapping of a vessel or aircraft. So this is how the use of a documentary credit. Today it can be used in any of these transactions. Let us now see the next. In some countries, local legislation, they impose a requirement. In some countries, local legislation impose a requirement for the use of the documentary credit for all types of goods that are imported. So all types of goods that are imported or certain types of goods that are imported. This ensures that the import of the underlying goods, whatever goods we are importing, it will be subject to specific terms and conditions. It will be subject to specific terms and conditions. This can mirror with local requirements or it can comply with local requirements. So documentary credits are used in some countries to support assembly industries. Even some local assembly industries it will support. Example, documentary credit will cover the import of goods in a kit form. It will cover the import of goods in a kit. The staff of the local factory, they will put all these materials together. They will put the materials and form a finished article. These can be goods like television, fridge, freezers, motor vehicles. So the documentary credits are also used in some countries to support local assembly industries. Local assembly industries. Example, they will cover the import of goods in a kit form and the staff of the local factory will put all these materials together and create a finished article. like television, fridge, freezers, motor vehicles. So, the use of the documentary credit allows, there are certain terms and conditions in the documentary credit which has to be complied. It is called a compliant presentation to include details when or how certain components are to be shipped. All this we will be dealing in a documentary credit MT700. We will look into the various fields in order to match the process, the workflow of the factory. Process and workflow of the factory. So let's see how this happens. So the using the documentary credit, the advantage is we can dictate certain terms and conditions, how the components can be shipped or to match the workflow of the factory. So shipment of goods or the services provided or the performance to be undertaken, what are the documents to be presented to a bank, what are the stipulated documents which is mentioned in our MT700. So it is possible for a documentary credit to be a method of settlement. It is a documentary credit, which means various documents are stipulated in our MT700. So the use of documentary credit as a method of settlement remains steady today. Again, ICC brought out a global survey on trade finance. Global survey on trade finance, May 2018. May 2018, ICC, International Chamber of Commerce, brought out global survey on trade finance. The volume of SWIFT messages, MT700 messages, fell by 2.69% between 2016 and 2017. This report of 2018 by ICC says it fell by 2.69%. 2.69% between 2016 and 17. The lowest drop. This is the lowest drop since 2011. 2011. So because the use of a SWIFT message MT700 is the most common, so which is the most reliable data from where we can get it? Only through SWIFT MT700 messages. SWIFT volume figures provide the only reliable data on the use of documentary credits. So documentary credits, these are all statistics which we are talking about. In 2017, 4,247,185 documentary credits were issued. MT700 messages, 4,247,185 messages. Almost 354,000 per month. Almost 354. So Asia Pacific region continued to account for the bulk. So which region continued for the bulk? It was the Asia Pacific region. Over 70% of the market. Global volumes remain below those which were experienced in 1970, 1980, 1990. Global volumes remain below. So in 2017 that was given. So euro is the second most used currency after dollars. After dollars, which is the most used currency? Euro. And the average value of a documentary credit issued in 2017 was US dollars 537,000. $537,000. That was the average value of a documentary credit issued in 2017. So this is 15.8% increase on the 2016 figure. 15.8% increase on the 2016 figure. So ICC did not issue a survey report in 2019. So the last report what we got was 2018. 19 we did not get the ICC survey report. So this is the documentary credit statistics. Next, after this, we have the textbook questions where we will be taking up in the multiple choice questions. Thank you very much.